When the active shooter alarm went off at Jefferson Elementary, most staff followed lockdown protocol and hid. But school nurse Linda Martinez grabbed her medical kit and ran toward the gunfire. What the terrified teachers didn't know was that Linda had spent 8 years as a combat medic in the 82nd Airborne, and she'd never lost a patient under fire. Today wouldn't be her first. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Before we begin this powerful story of a school nurse whose gentle hands once saved soldiers' lives in the deadliest combat zones, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe that true healers never stop serving, hit that subscribe button and share this story to honor those who protect our children from the shadows. Linda Martinez arrived at Jefferson Elementary at 7:15 a.m., just like she had every weekday for the past 12 years. At 52, she moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd learned that small actions could mean the difference between life and death, though the children who visited her office for scraped knees and stomach aches would never suspect such depth behind her gentle smile. She unlocked the nurse's office, a cozy room decorated with cheerful posters about hand-washing and healthy eating. Her medical supplies were meticulously organized, bandages sorted by size, medications locked in precise rows, emergency equipment checked and rechecked. To casual observers, it looked like typical school nurse preparation. In reality, it was the habit of someone trained to save lives when seconds mattered. "Morning, Mrs. Martinez," called out 8-year-old Emma as she skipped down the hallway. "My loose tooth came out." Linda smiled, reaching into her desk drawer for a small envelope decorated with a tooth fairy. "That's wonderful, Emma. Did you remember to brush the other teeth extra well?" As Emma nodded enthusiastically and bounded away, Linda's hand briefly touched the bottom of the drawer where a purple heart medal lay hidden beneath medical forms. For 12 years, she'd been just the school nurse. For 8 years before that, she'd been Staff Sergeant Linda Martinez, 82nd Airborne Division, who'd earned that medal pulling wounded soldiers from a bombed convoy in Kandahar. She closed the drawer. That life was over. This one was enough. At 9:30 a.m., the morning rush began. Tommy from Mrs. Peterson's second grade class arrived with a scraped elbow from recess. Maria from kindergarten had a headache. Jake from 4th grade needed his inhaler refilled. Each child received Linda's full attention, gentle hands, and a smile that made everything better. "Mrs. Martinez," Tommy asked as she cleaned his scrape, "were you always a nurse?" Linda paused, antiseptic wipe in hand. "I used to help people in different places," she said carefully, "but I like helping you kids the best." By 11 a.m., her office had settled into the familiar rhythm of a typical Tuesday. Linda was updating medical records when she heard something that made her blood freeze. 3 sharp cracks echoed from the east wing of the building. Linda's training kicked in before her conscious mind processed what she'd heard. Those weren't backfiring cars or construction sounds. Those were gunshots. Close range, small caliber, probably a handgun. Her hands moved automatically to her emergency protocols while her ears strained for additional information. The school's PA system crackled to life. "Code red. Code red. This is not a drill. All staff and students initiate lockdown procedures immediately." Around her, she could hear doors slamming shut, the click of locks engaging, whispered instructions as teachers moved children away from windows. Standard protocol: hide, lock doors, stay quiet, wait for help. Linda grabbed her trauma kit, the one that officially contained basic first aid supplies, but which she'd quietly supplemented with items that could handle more serious emergencies. She clipped her radio to her belt and moved toward the door. Her training from Fort Bragg was simple. When people are wounded, you go to them. You don't wait for safety. You don't hide. You move toward the sound of danger because that's where the casualties will be. More shots. Closer now, from the main hallway. Linda opened her door and stepped into the corridor. The hallway was eerily quiet, except for the sound of Linda's soft-soled shoes on linoleum. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow. She moved along the wall, using door frames for cover, her trauma kit held ready. 20 feet ahead, she found the first casualty. Mrs. Henderson, the 3rd grade teacher, was sitting against the wall holding her shoulder. Blood seeped between her fingers, but she was conscious and alert. Linda knelt beside her, automatically assessing the wound. "Where is he?" Linda whispered, opening her kit. "Main office," Mrs. Henderson gasped. "Young man, maybe 20. Dark jacket. Kept yelling about the system." Linda's hands worked efficiently, applying pressure bandages and checking for signs of shock. The wound was clean, through and through, no major arteries hit. Mrs. Henderson would live if she got proper medical attention within the hour. "Stay here," Linda instructed, helping her teacher to a more secure position behind the water fountain. "Keep pressure on this bandage. Help is coming." More gunshots echoed from the direction of the main office. Linda counted 4 distinct reports, then silence. She moved forward. Linda found him in the main office, a young man, maybe 19, standing over the reception desk with a pistol in his shaking hands. He was thin, wearing a dark hoodie, his face twisted with an anger that Linda recognized from a dozen combat zones, the look of someone who'd given up on everything except causing pain. Behind the desk, Mrs. Collins, the school secretary, was hunched over, bleeding from her arm but alive. 2 office workers had taken cover behind filing cabinets. The gunman turned as Linda appeared in the doorway. For a moment they stared at each other, a school nurse in cheerful scrubs and a young man with death in his eyes. "Stay back!" he screamed, waving the weapon. "I'm not done yet!" Linda raised her hands, keeping her medical kit visible. "I'm just here to help the wounded. I'm not armed." "Nobody leaves. Nobody gets help. They all need to suffer like I suffered." Linda's combat experience analyzed the situation automatically. Unstable subject, emotionally compromised, weapon-loaded but safety habits poor. He was dangerous but not professionally trained. His grip was wrong, stance unbalanced. Most importantly, he was focused on his grievances, not tactical awareness. "What's your name?" Linda asked, taking a small step forward. "Doesn't matter. Names don't matter when nobody cares about you." Another step. Linda could see Mrs. Collins clearly now, arterial bleeding from her upper arm, possibly nicked by a ricochet. She had maybe 10 minutes before shock set in. "I care," Linda said simply. "That's why I'm here." "You don't know anything," the gunman shouted. "None of you know what it's like. I tried to get help, tried to tell people, but nobody listened." Linda recognized the profile. Young, isolated, probably dealing with mental health issues that had gone untreated. In Afghanistan, she'd seen soldiers with the same look, the same desperate need to be heard before the darkness took over completely. "You're right," she said, moving closer. "I don't know your story, but I know about pain, and I know about feeling invisible." "Stop moving," Linda froze. "The woman behind the desk is bleeding badly. If I don't help her soon, she's going to die. Is that what you want?" His hand wavered. She wasn't supposed to. I just wanted them to listen." "They're listening now," Linda said gently. "The whole world is listening. But if she dies, that's all anyone will remember." For a moment, the rage in his eyes flickered. Linda saw the scared, hurting young man beneath the violence. "Let me help her," Linda said. "Then we can talk about whatever brought you here." The gunman's grip on the weapon loosened slightly. You really want to help?" "It's what I do," Linda replied. "It's who I am." He nodded slowly, lowering the gun a few inches. Linda moved quickly to Mrs. Collins, her hands already working to stop the bleeding. As she applied pressure to the wound, she spoke quietly to the gunman. "What's your name?" she asked again. "Marcus," he said, his voice small. "Marcus Williams." "Marcus, I'm Linda. I've been helping people for a long time. Can you tell me what happened?" As Linda worked on Mrs. Collins, applying pressure bandages, checking vital signs, starting an IV from her emergency supplies, Marcus began to talk. His story spilled out in broken fragments: depression, bullying, a system that had failed him at every turn, and a final crisis that had pushed him over the edge. "I tried to get help," he said, tears mixing with rage. "Counselors, doctors, my family. Nobody listened. They just gave me pills and told me to deal with it." Linda's hands never stopped moving as she treated Mrs. Collins, but her voice remained calm and focused on Marcus. "That sounds incredibly frustrating, feeling invisible when you're crying for help." "You get it," Marcus said, surprised. "Nobody gets it." "I've seen a lot of people in pain," Linda replied honestly. Different kinds of pain, but pain all the same. She finished stabilizing Mrs. Collins and moved to help the office workers, both of whom had minor injuries from glass and debris. Marcus watched her work, his weapon now pointed at the floor. "You're really just helping people," he observed. "It's what I've always done," Linda said, "even when the world was falling apart around me." Where was that? Linda paused in her work. She'd never told anyone at the school about her military service, but something in Marcus's eyes, the same look she'd seen in wounded soldiers, made her decide to trust him with the truth. "Afghanistan," she said simply. "I was a combat medic. I spent 8 years pulling people out of situations where everything had gone wrong." Marcus stared at her. "You were in the war." "I was, and I learned that even in the worst situations, even when everything seems hopeless, there's always a choice to help instead of hurt." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Marcus asked. "About being in the war?" Linda finished checking the last office worker and turned to face him fully. "Because that's not who I am anymore. I came here to take care of children, to be part of something peaceful and good." "But you still know how to fight?" Linda nodded slowly. "I know how to do a lot of things, Marcus, but I choose to heal instead." For the first time since she'd found him, Marcus looked directly at her instead of at his weapon. "I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted someone to notice that I was drowning." "I notice," Linda said, "and I'm here." The sound of sirens filled the air outside. Police, ambulances, SWAT teams responding to the crisis. Marcus's grip tightened on his weapon again. "They'll kill me," he said, panic returning. "They'll come in here and kill me." "Not if you let me help you," Linda replied. "Not if you choose to put the gun down and let me walk you out of here." "Why would you do that? I could have killed you." Linda stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Because 12 years ago, I promised myself that I was done with violence, that I was going to spend the rest of my life saving people instead of watching them die. That includes you, Marcus." Marcus looked at the weapon in his hands, then at Linda, then at Mrs. Collins, who was breathing steadily thanks to Linda's treatment. "If I put this down," he said quietly, "will you stay with me? When they come in?" "I'll stay with you," Linda promised. "But you have to put it down now." Marcus set the gun on the floor and kicked it away from himself. Linda immediately moved to him, checking for injuries, her medic instincts taking over even though he was technically the threat. "Are you hurt anywhere?" she asked. He shook his head, tears flowing freely now. "I'm just tired. I'm so tired of hurting." "I know," Linda said, guiding him to sit against the wall. "We're going to get you help. Real help this time." When the SWAT team breached the office 3 minutes later, they found an unusual scene. A school nurse sitting beside a young man who'd surrendered his weapon, both of them waiting calmly while she continued to monitor the injured. "Situation secure," Linda called out to the tactical team. "We have 3 wounded, all stable. The shooter has surrendered and needs medical evaluation." The team leader stared at her. "Ma'am, who are you?" "I'm the school nurse," Linda replied simply. "This is what I do." Later, as paramedics took over care of the wounded and Marcus was led away in custody, Detective Sarah Chen found Linda sitting quietly in her office, filling out incident reports. "Mrs. Martinez," Detective Chen said, "I need to ask you some questions about what happened in there." "Of course." "The tactical team said they found you treating casualties and sitting with the shooter. That's unusual behavior for a school employee." Linda looked up from her paperwork. "Someone was hurt. I helped them. Someone else was in crisis. I helped him too." "The shooter said you told him you were a combat medic. Is that true?" Linda nodded. "Staff Sergeant Linda Martinez, 82nd Airborne Division, 8 years of service, 3 deployments to Afghanistan." Detective Chen's eyebrows rose. "Why isn't that in your employment record?" "Because it wasn't relevant to the job," Linda replied. "I came here to take care of children, not to be defined by my military service." But today it was relevant. Linda considered this. Today, everything was relevant. My medical training, my combat experience, my understanding of what it's like to be in crisis, but most importantly, my commitment to helping people instead of hurting them. The school board is going to want to know why you approached an active shooter instead of following lockdown protocol. Linda closed her pen and looked directly at the detective. Because lockdown protocol assumes someone else will handle the emergency. In my experience, sometimes you are the someone else. 3 weeks later, Linda stood in front of the Jefferson Elementary faculty meeting, feeling distinctly uncomfortable with the attention. Principal Williams, no relation to Marcus, had insisted on recognizing her actions publicly. "I don't need recognition," Linda said to the assembled teachers and staff. "I did what my training prepared me to do." "But that's exactly why we need to recognize it," Principal Williams replied. "You saved lives that day. Mrs. Collins is back at work because of your medical care. Marcus Williams is getting the mental health treatment he needed because you talked him down. And 23 children in that building are safe because you acted when others couldn't." Mrs. Henderson, her arm still in a sling, raised her hand. "Linda, I have to ask, why didn't you ever tell us about your military service?" Linda thought about this for a moment. "Because I wanted to be known for who I am now, not who I used to be. I'm a school nurse. I take care of scraped knees and stomach aches and scared children. That's enough for me." "But it's not just enough," said Mrs. Peterson, the second-grade teacher. "It's everything. You brought all of your experience, military and civilian, to protecting our kids." Linda smiled. "I suppose that's true, but I hope it's a long time before any of us need to use that kind of experience again." 6 months later, Linda received a letter that surprised her. It was from Marcus Williams, writing from the psychiatric facility where he was receiving treatment. "Dear Mrs. Martinez, I wanted you to know that I'm doing better. The doctors here actually listen, and I'm learning better ways to handle the pain. I think about what you said that day, about choosing to help instead of hurt. I want to do that too. I'm sorry for what I put everyone through. I'm especially sorry that you had to use skills I know you hoped you'd never need again, but I'm grateful you were there. When I get out, I want to help people too. Maybe not as a nurse or a soldier, but somehow. You showed me that even in the worst moment, there's always a choice to be better. Thank you for seeing me as a person worth saving." Marcus. Linda folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, next to her Purple Heart. Both reminders of difficult times that had led to something better. That afternoon, as usual, her office filled with children needing Band-Aids and comfort. Tommy brought a loose tooth, Emma had a scrape from playground equipment, and little Jake needed his inhaler refilled. "Mrs. Martinez," Tommy asked as she cleaned his scrape, "my mom says you're a hero. Are you really a hero?" Linda smiled, applying a colorful Band-Aid with practiced gentleness. "I think heroes are just people who help others when they need it most. By that definition, there are heroes everywhere. Like teachers and firefighters and police." "Exactly. And like kind children who help their friends and people who stand up for others and anyone who chooses to make the world a little bit better." Tommy considered this seriously. "So I could be a hero too?" "You already are," Linda said, smoothing down the edges of his Band-Aid. "Every time you're kind to someone who's having a bad day." As the children filed out of her office, chattering about heroes and kindness, Linda returned to her paperwork. Outside, Jefferson Elementary buzzed with the normal sounds of learning and growing and childhood. Sometimes, Linda reflected, the greatest victory isn't in the dramatic moment of crisis. It's in the quiet return to normal, the restoration of safety, the knowledge that children can go back to being children. Her hands, the same hands that had performed surgery in bombed-out field hospitals and talked down an armed young man in crisis, reached for another cartoon Band-Aid. This was exactly where she belonged.